Hi everyone, this is Andrew Baranski, and in this video, we're looking at part 1 for assessment in Brightspace, specifically looking at setting up your grades tool in your gradebook, and then creating assignments and creating rubrics. Alright, so to get started here, I'm just going to jump into my demonstration class. Now there are a wealth of assessment tools within Brightspace. There's really so much you can use. It's one of my favorite features in Brightspace. In the WRDSB, across your navbar, you may see this assessment icon. This is a clustering of assessment tools you can use within Brightspace. So if I click on this assessment icon across the top here, you'll see a variety of options. I think it's just good to start with a quick overview. First here, Quick Eval. Students do not have access to this in CS, but teachers do. This is a great space and collection of your work across your classes as it comes in. It is a really great way to just jump out and get a big picture and overview of what work's been coming in, when did it come in, it spread across your classes. You can filter by most recent or by assignment. It is a really, really great tool to kind of stay on top of all of your assessment, what's coming in, what do you need to give feedback on, what's returned and what's not. So definitely check out Quick Eval. The assignments feature here is to create and post assignments, and there are a variety of ways to do this, and we'll be looking at that in this video. There is a built-in grades tool, and it comes with a lot of ways to set it up and roll it out and make it work the way you want to, which we'll be looking at in this video. Rubrics. There are some really great ways to use rubrics within Brightspace, and so we're going to cover that as well. And that'll kind of be the key of this video, but there'll be some other ones coming where we can look at other tools like the built-in quizzes tool, how to track class progress and specific progress of students in your class. Using the groups tool in Brightspace, you create groups once and you can create them throughout the class, and then you can assign those groups to different things in a variety of different ways, whether it's as an assignment or having specific students see content at certain times. If you want to gamify your learning your class a little bit, you can actually create and set awards for when certain things happen. Students automatically get that award, or you can assign it when something happens as well too. You can run surveys. You can build out self-assessments for students to use and share with students in your class. The checklist tool I actually love. It is a great way you can just build checklists for students and share with students where they can stay on top of what they're doing and actually check those off. And there's even a built-in assignment for creating and getting video submissions from your students. All right, so a wealth of resources here. If I pop out of this, you will probably see this. If you're not using all these, this doesn't work for you, you can always click the 3 dots to customize and edit your nav bar. Change this up. If you want to remove this icon, you can, and then you can add just specific ones of these. These are all system icons that you can add to your nav bar as you see fit. All right. To get started here, if you're looking at assessment, I would recommend you do this right at the start of your class, is start off with the grades tool and the setup there. Now, it's totally up to you if you want to use the grades tool or not. You can still use assignments and quizzes and everything in Brightspace without having it connect to the grades tool. But the grades tool there is to work as that gradebook if you want. I really like this feature. It's nice to have everything in one space. So as you're building out your tasks and assessing things for your students, it's filtering into that gradebook as well. Assessment is probably one of the hardest things we do as educators, and so one of the things really nice about Brightspace is there's lots of ways to customize for what it looks like to you, and you can actually change how it looks and feels for your students as well too. You can assess by levels or letters or percentages or numbers. You can even create your own custom grading scheme in here. So we're going to look at how to do that. So to get started here in my class, I'm going to click on assessment and then click on grades. Okay. Now, I haven't added anything to this class yet. You can see I've got 2 demo students here. As you're adding assignments and finding things, you can see that. You'll see your list of students in your class. A number of things to highlight here. First off, the 4 tabs across the top. So I've got entering grades, which is the page I'm on right now. I can go in and manage my grades and create grade items and grade categories. I mentioned that schemes piece. You can create your own custom grading schemes. So again, if you want to work by levels, you can have certain levels set. Now it can tie to a number 2, and you can decide what those are. And you can decide the visibility for students too. So if you only want the student to see the level and not the other number related to it, you can do that within Brightspace. And then really importantly, where we're going to set up here is the setup wizard. And this is what we're going to start with. So I'm going to click on the setup wizard. And here, again, you'll see a list and kind of welcome you in, and it gives you just kind of an overview of where you're at. So there's some default settings it's going to start off with for you here, but this is just an overview, and I believe there's 7 steps to go through. This is where you decide how your gradebook is going to work and how grades and assessments are going to work within Brightspace for you and your students. So if you just scroll down to the bottom here, you're going to see a start button. I'm going to click this to start. Okay, now you can see I'm on step 1. So the first question here is asked me, do I want to use weighted or do I want to use a points-based system? As you're going through this, I highly recommend hovering over the question marks and clicking, and it'll give you an example of how that works. If you're not sure about the terminology they're using in here, it tries to give you examples and explains that. So me personally, I'm going to go on a weighted-based system for this and click continue. Step 2 is how is the final grade released in your class? You see you've got a few options here. So you've got the calculated final grade, an adjusted final grade, and then you can choose whether you want to automatically release that or not. Personally, I like this setting here. So I've got adjusted final grade, and it allows me to modify or adjust users' grades before releasing them. I think this is really great in Ontario from a growing success standpoint. You get to use your professional judgment. It's not just the math and numbers of how they work out. You take in that whole picture and that triangulation with your observations and conversations along with your products. And then so here you can go in and adjust that final grade. And then since I don't have this checked off, I'm going to choose later when I want to release that final grade to my students. I'm going to click continue. Step 3 here for how the grade calculations work. This one is one you definitely want to make sure you set and you catch right off the bat. So what to do with ungraded items. You're going to want to flip this over to drop ungraded items in the WRDSB. Basically looking for that no lates, no zeros policy and that philosophy of assessment. So with this, basically, if you don't have something entered in for a student, basically it's not affecting their mark. If you have this checked off, and again, I would really recommend you to turn this off. You can always, and if you again have no demonstration of learning, you can still input something. It just means if there's no grade in there, it's not calculating it in the student's marks. You want to flip this one over and then auto update here. So automatically keep the final grade updated. If you have that checked off, as you're putting new assessments in, it's going to automatically update that for you. So I like having that one checked off. Clicking continue. So step 4 here, the grading scheme you're going to use. Now the default going with that weighted category at the start is going to be using percentages, but you can actually go in here and create your own custom grading scheme. Once you've created that grading scheme, so you can do that with schemes here. And so if you want to use a custom grading scheme, you should start off with that. You can always save the wizard and either go back or go through it, save it, and then come back and do it again and make edits after the fact. So you can change this, but you can go and set up a scheme here. As a quick example, there's one example in here of me, one way you could use levels. You can preview it. So I click the preview option over here. You can see the setup that I've got for this. And so again, here's the symbols. This is what you'd be using in your assessments. So we've got, 1 minus 1, 1 plus. There's a percentage tied to that. There's a color coding system for this that you can use for you and your students. This will show up in various areas. And then what does that actually assigned value work out to? Okay, so you can see that system here with the levels in this example. If you set up a custom grading scheme for this, so again, if I close this here after previewing it and I chose this one, I would then in my assignments be able to assign a level to those students and then still have that number tied to it show up in my gradebook based on my setup. But again, you can create any kind of custom scheme that you want to use for your class. Once you add a scheme, you'll see it in here as an option to add, or again, you can stick with the basic percentages. I like levels personally, so I'm going to stick with this and click continue. Next one, how things display for students. There's some really cool options in here for educators, for students. So managing view display options here. Basically, it's just how many decimals are going to be showed. I do laugh at this, but I do appreciate there are times where that decimal place might be interesting. So here the default is showing students 1 decimal place on their mark. You can set that to 0 or 2 or 3 if you want to go to that one. I think 1 works well. here, really, this is probably like the thing I think that's the coolest about the Brightspace Gradebook Setup Wizard is you decide how things view to your students. So when it comes to the grades detail in your class, do you want them to see the points grade? And again, there's question marks for each of these to explain to you just what it is, but you can toggle on or off what you want your students to see as you're assessing. So I've got points, weighted, the grade scheme symbol. So for me, that would be the levels, and the grade scheme color. So if I only wanted my students to see the level and the color associated with it, but not the points or the weighted, I can still use that points and weighted system. I can be assigning numbers and using those percents if I want, but I can choose to have my students only see the level. Or again, I could have it all on for my students, or I could have it set to nothing for my students. So really up to you and kind of where you want to go with that. I think actually this kind of setup here is nice. It's got the grade scheme symbol and the grade scheme color. I'll have some math in the background, but I'm not going to have my students focus on those numbers. Just that I'll focus on just the level with them. Again, for how you're displaying things up to 1 decimal for the students, you can have that separate for yourself and your students. And then characters displayed for text items. Again, just an open space for there. And finally here, final grade calculation. So display final grade calculation to users. So as students are working through the class, if you're using the gradebook, students can always see their updated overall mark in the class as you're assessing. Or if you don't want your students to see that, you can toggle that off. They'll just see the individual assessments, but not the overall scheme with it as you're working through your class. Click continue. And then it just gives you a quick summary. So it just summarizes. You can read over the choices you made. You can go back and change something if you like, or if you're done, click finish. And now my gradebook is set up. So via the setup wizard here, it kind of gives me display because I've set it up now. You can always come back and go through the setup again. You can look through the different tabs here. If I go back to the setup wizard again, I can restart it. But from here now, next place I would go would be manage grades. Okay. From here, I've got one demo assignment I've kind of put in here. So it's one starting tool that I've used already. So it's pulled it over. Good to know. This was actually something I used in another video showing the Google Assignments integration. So I created a Google assignment and shared it right within content. Great to know it does sync up with the Brightspace gradebook for you. So if you're using Google Assignments, it's there. Put your work you're actually assessing and putting things in through that Google assignment integration, not directly through Brightspace, but it will sync up with the gradebook, bring the assignment title over, the max points you set, and as you assess students, their scores will come in here for you. Great to see though, it's a grade item. So 2 important kind of pieces of language here. If you go up to the new button here, and if I click new, I see a grade item or a grade category. In Brightspace terminology relating to WRDSB, your categories are your weighting categories, the big boxes you're putting things into. So again, grade items would be specific tasks that you put into categories. Categories at a secondary level would be like your essential learnings as an example, or the units or the subject, whatever you're setting up your gradebook with, your categories are your big overall items. So as an example, if I click on category, I'm brought to a page here, lots of kind of control for what I do with this. So I'm just gonna name this essential learning 1 as an example. You can have a short name for it. So I might go EL1, oops. And again, there's always those question marks if you're not sure what is this. For the description here, you can actually add a description for that category if you like. And even again, do you allow users to see that description? So when students come into their grades, they can see your categories, view that description here. Or again, you can even link out to resources about what you're assessing for this if you want. Okay. And again, choose to allow your students to see that or not. And then you've got the weighting pieces here. Remember how you set up your gradebook in that setup wizard, if it's by weight or points. So I went with a weighting category here. So it's going to have to add up to 100%. Brightspace will flag to you if not. So I might say this weighting category here for this one is going to be 20% of the overall mark, and I'll put assessments in this. Okay. You've got the option here to allow it to exceed the category weight. You can play around with that and look at what that means. And then distribution. So how are the items added to this weighting category, this essential learning, or the subject, however you set this up? How are they distributed? So you can manually assign a weight to items in the category. So as if I have this overall big idea in this box here of marks, and say I have 4 tasks throughout the school year that's going into this category, how are the marks within that 20 going to be distributed to your students? So again, I can manually assign it for each. I could have it set to distribute the weights by points across all of them, or again, distribute evenly across, and then even some other options there. I'm going to set this for a manual setup, but it's great to know those options. And then again, even getting geekier with the show display options here, you can choose what does the students get to see and what can't the students see based off how you want to set this up. Okay. If you've got your multiple categories to create, you can go save and new and go and build through the others, or click save and close and just have this set there. Now I'll see here in my categories, I've got this essential learning 1 here, and it's weighted as 20% of the mark, okay? And I've got this weight of 10 here, so it's adding these together for my 30 right now. You'll see this demo assignment, and as you create assignments, if it's not added to a category, you can come back to your manage grades here and move these into a category. To move this into a category, and again, for your assignments, you can choose to edit it, hide this from users, enter grade, go and enter grades for it, view stats or the event log. If I wanted to move this assignment into this category, I can click here and then bulk edit. And I can see this this assignment, the short name, the grading scheme for it. Now over here, it says category none. Now I've got that essential learning I added my category. It's 20% of the final grade. So I can move this grade item into this category and click save. And now I'll see it falls under that area. So just to highlight here, this was set as a 10 points. Students are getting a mark, or this is weighted as 10, sorry, it's a mark out of 4. So I'd be going through and assessing that as it comes in. If a student got 3 out of 4, so it might equate to 75%, that would be weighted as 10% of this 20% because it's in there, okay? So just keep in mind, think about how the math works. Brightspace will try and summarize all this for you and give you information around that. Through here, again, I can go and create my grade items, but the assignments as I'm creating them, add them to categories with the bulk edit feature here and put them in where I want. Again, your overall in blue should add up to 100 at the end. You're putting specific tasks within each. Keeping all of that in mind here, good to know there's kind of 2 ways you can go about this. If you create these in here, when you're in assignments and creating your assignments, you can choose the grade item and the grade category and assign it to that, and to make sure that those things match up. There's a kind of back and forth. You can go between manage grades and your assignments, decide what is what and how they connect and how they're going to build off each other through that space. Okay. All right. If you're entering grades, you can go back to our enter grades page here, and this is kind of where it's going to land for you when you start off. So again, you'll see your students through here. I've got that 1 assignment in. You can go through and assess here and build that off. I can go back to the setup wizard and change it, build out schemes, and manage my grade book here with those grade items and those grade categories. Always good to know with the more actions, how you're kind of using things here. There is a spreadsheet view, so there's 2 kind of toggles back and forth for the view in this space, and to have a look at there as well. And one thing I'll add very quickly, and it'll be focused for some other videos, but not this one, is Brightspace, and this is early 2021 right now, has launched a whole new setup in addition to their gradebook called Mastery View. Really quickly, within Brightspace, you can add in the curriculum expectations from Ontario to your class. And so say you added in the overalls for the subject area you're teaching, you can actually throughout Brightspace in portfolio, in assignments, and with rubrics, add those expectations to what you're assessing. You can still have your gradebook and weightings and levels or numbers here set up and assessed by that. But if you level off level 1, 2, 3, 4 by the curriculum expectations, that will also go into your gradebook in a separate view called Mastery View to show you each individual student's progress and give recommendations for where they're at. So definitely be aware of that. I'm super geeked out about that new master review and everything that you can do by tracking by overall expectations from your curriculum, but just something to be aware of there. Don't need to use it, but you will see when you come into your gradebook an option to flip through grades and master review once you have expectations added to your class. Not the focus for this video. Okay, we've gone through the gradebook setup wizard. Let's have a look at setting up an assignment now. So via my nav bar here, I'm going to click on assessment and then go to assignments. Okay, now you'll notice like there was that one before and there's nothing here. This is my Brightspace assignments area. The one I created with Google Assignments, and that's a Google integration with Brightspace. It does sync up and connect to the gradebook, but not to the Brightspace assignments folder, because Google Assignments and Brightspace assignments are separate tools. Okay, so I've got nothing in here. I'm going to create a new assignment. I'm going to go up here and click new folder. I'm going to land on a page that looks just like this. When you come in here, you may be prompted to either use the new view or old view. If you're brand new to Brightspace and just getting started, I would definitely go with the new view. If you're an experienced user, you can toggle back and forth between the two and see which one you like. They're not quite at feature parity yet. There's actually a few more options in the older view, but again, they keep building that out and the new view is going to be caught up soon. I personally like the new view, but again, up to you. Good to know right in the top right, and this is true in content and some other areas across Brightspace, when they're pushing out new features or a new display for how things look, you can click this drop down arrow and then toggle back and forth between the experience. So it tells me I'm on the new assignment experience, but if I don't want to be on that experience yet, I can turn it off and go back to the old experience, or if I'm on the old, I can use that little arrow in the top right to switch back and forth and have a look. All right. For creating an assignment here, I'm just going to go assignment 1. So you can give it a title for the score out of. Again, you can have a default ungraded. So you're just looking to collect some demonstration of learning, not worry about the grades toolbar. If you're not using the Brightspace gradebook, just leave it as ungraded. But if I click in here, okay, I can set a number of points. So I'm going to make this, I'm going to have a 10 points tied to this. You can see here it's in grades. You're going to see throughout Brightspace as you set this little ribbon. That means it's tied to a grade tool in your grades book. I can choose from the grades, I can remove it from grades, or I can reset it to ungraded from here. If I go choose from grades, it's going to pull up my gradebook and allow me to assign this to a category. So this assignment that I'm creating here and I've set for 10 points, I'm also going to put it in that grade category I just created. So it's going to become part of that 100% or that 20% I set for it. Okay. If you've created your grade items, you can see I haven't created any new grade items in there in my gradebook. I could also just attach it to that grade item. So it goes either way. So I can put it in that category. If I created my grade items in advance, I could just link it to that grade item. Here I'm creating a new grade item or task and putting it into the grade category. So I've got this set up. I'm going to click OK. Due date here. I actually really like this about Brightspace. Again, there is a set due date, I think, and a philosophical piece of education, but we also need to be flexible with our students for their life events and just how they're working through things. So if I wanted to make this due for, say, Friday later this week, I can click that off. And again, it's going to default to end of day, but you can change this time here too. Now the due date is it's going to mark it to the students. It's going to let them know when it's due. But if I jump over here to, you've got 3 columns we're going to look through. If I click on availability dates and release conditions here, and conditions, you'll see there's also a start date and an end date. The way this works, the due date flags the student, this is when your work is due. The start date means students, let's see if I can get it here, will let students know when they can access that assignment, and the end date kind of cuts off that access for your students. You do not need to have a start or end date, and I think there's actually good reasons not to have a start or end date. Again, just understanding how the tool works. Due date lets students know when they should submit it. Start date controls the starting point for when they get access. End date controls when they lose access to that assignment submitting it. Again, options there. You can leave all of these blank. You don't need to have dates. They're just there for you. We could probably do a whole video on release conditions, but one thing that's really great throughout Brightspace, you can set controls on access to certain things in your class. One example for assignment might be you can't access or use the assignment until you access the content related to that assignment. So if I click on drop down, you can, if you have a release condition you've created, you can add it. If I click on create new, you can see there are a ton of things in here. So it could be like, if you earn this award, then you can do it. It's kind of like an if this, then that. But like I said, that visited content topic. So the student won't see or access the assignment until they visit the content to it, or post to a discussion, or do this, or complete this quiz, or get a certain score on the practice quiz before they do the actual assignment. You can get super geeky with this. I'm just going to leave it for now and not add a release condition. You can also, this is more newer in Brightspace, manage special access. So you can actually set like a certain group of users. So again, if you had maybe a hard date for your assignment and giving the students opportunities later on to show that, but for a group of students, you could extend that access or that due date for them and change that too. Again, release conditions and special access is the super geeky stuff. Don't know if I'd worry about these a ton. Okay, so that's our availability dates and conditions area. I'm gonna pop back over here. So I can put the instructions, please, and then again, whatever you wanna give to your instructions for your student for this assignment. Good to note though, this is again a rich tool and builder here. So you've got bold, italics, underline, you can do a number of bolded lists, and you also have this awesome feature through Brightspace for insert stuff. So again, you could go in and say, drop a Google file embed here and link a file for them to see and view. You could embed a YouTube video in here for them to watch first, link out to other things, make your own video notes so the students can actually see you and hear you giving the instructions for the assignment. Really cool tools to build that right in. You also have your options to upload a file, so attach something off your computer, say a PDF or an image. With attached link to existing activity, I actually really like this one. So here's everything else in your course. So for example, if there's a resource or some learning your students need to do for this assignment, you can link to that content page. So here's my units. I'm gonna go here and say let's even go to the subfolder here. This page here, this is a template page I use of content. There's the content page tied to this assignment. So students can go and review that resource before they come in here and submit. Attach existing is great. Lots of things you can attach and link out that way. You can attach a web link, attach from your Google Drive, lots of different options here. Okay, you can even record audio or a separate video, although I would personally use the video note tool with insert stuff in here, but you can attach audio and video here as well. Okay, so there's our basic setup. If I look at submission and completion here, so I'm gonna expand this out now. This one's really important for assignments. Okay, so I can see assignment type, individual assignment. The default in Brightspace is going to be for a file submission. And you'll see here though, you have options as the educator when you're creating your assignments. You've got 4 options here, and I actually really like this. File submission is going to force the students to add a file to this assignment. They will not be allowed to submit to you until they add a file. Now, we work in Google a lot within WRDSB. If they've done that one-time sync with the Google Apps widget with their board Google account in Brightspace on the Brightspace homepage, when a student goes into an assignment and clicks on add a file for file submission, they will then see a Google Drive icon to allow them to submit a file right from their Google Drive. Good to know for Brightspace assignments. You don't need to worry about sharing permissions at all. It basically takes a replica of that document and posts it into the Brightspace assignment Dropbox for you. You can see and view it right there. It's a timestamp with it, and you can annotate right on top of it with the built-in Brightspace annotations tool. Okay. Text submission does not force students to have a file attached to their Dropbox and share with you. It gives them a text box. Now it is a detailed text box. Think of it like a discussion. They could add a video note and share a video of themselves speaking to you. They can add files in. They can do a whole bunch of things within that text box. So keep that in mind. And then here they would just have to type something in or add something to that text box to submit it to you. You also get options for on-paper submission. So if you're collecting something from your students to assess after the fact, mark it off as on-paper submission. And then here you're going into this space to document it for that assignment, have that digital copy of it, and maybe connect it to your gradebook. Or finally, you've got observed in person. So something you're actually going and observing in the moment. You'll see you get different options with each. So You could get set like, what is this? Manually, the learner marks it off as when they've completed that observed in person with you. When you evaluate it, it's marked as done. If I go back to on paper submission here, you kind of get those same options for when is this done and completed. And then you can look through that as well, those different options. I'm gonna go to file submission here. You get a few other options with this now. So files allowed per submission. You can restrict students to one file or allow them to resubmit as many times as they like. It will show you each version that's submitted, have it be date and time stamped, and keep it all in that file submission for you. So it's a nice view if you're going through a formative process where students are kind of going back and forth and resubmitting off their feedback. You get to see that history for that student in one spot, and it'll be the mark you use or the assessment you use on it will be tied to that one piece or the final piece in there. It's like for the whole, for that Dropbox. For submissions, all submissions are kept as an option. Only one submission allowed, or only the most recent submission is kept. I would say keep all, but again, up to you. I wouldn't use this because it flags you for work that's coming in, but if you want to get an email notification as something comes in, maybe it's like towards the end of the class and you want to be notified right away, you can add your email in here to get that as well. So that's the submission and completion area. And last but not least, the evaluation and feedback. Now I can add a rubric here. So I can create a new rubric. I'm only seeing create new because I haven't created any rubrics in this yet, and that's where we're heading to next in this video. But if I had made rubrics in advance, or I have a generic rubric that I can use for multiple assignments and I've created it, I would see an option here for add rubric as well. So I can create a brand new rubric from here, or I would suggest actually just go and build your rubrics in the Rubrics tool and then add them to your assignments as you go. Okay, you can see learning objectives here and some pieces around that. Again, wouldn't focus on this one right now. Last but not least, this should be checked off by default. I highly recommend you leave this on. Brightspace is a really great built-in annotations tool. So as student work comes in, if they submit a Google Doc or slide deck, if it is from Microsoft Word, if it's a PDF, it's an image, it comes in and you view it in the Brightspace assignment Dropbox, and you can use built-in annotation tools right on your device where you can add little sticky notes on and give feedback and move it where you want and type that in, or highlight things or write on things. If you use a tablet and you've got a stylus, just actually log in via the browser. Brightspace is HTML5, which means it's responsive to your device, and you should be able to write right on student work from a tablet if you have a modern tablet, and that option for a stylus there as well. But you can do this right from your computer too. It's a great little option. Okay, all right. We've got our title, points, added in grades. I can remove from grades 2 and set to ungraded. Due date, you've got options for the availability date and conditions, what kind of submission is it, and what does completion look like. Adding a rubric, you can link out and add all kinds of resources to this. Down at the bottom here, you're going to see visibility is off. Just like in content, you can decide what your students can see and when. If you want your students to be able to see this assignment right off the bat in the assignments folder for them, make this visible, or you can like have this set up but not ready for your students to see and choose later when you want to make it visible. I'll leave this as not visible right now. I'm going to click save and close. This is going to pop me off to the assignment folder here so I can see this work. I've got 2 students in my class, so it's letting me know 2 students have not completed yet, haven't had anything completed. It gives you tracking for what you've evaluated or not, and then whether you've returned that evaluation feedback back to your students or not. You can do that as you're going, or wait and do it all in one shot. It flags the due date for me here. If I want to come back and edit this assignment, I can click the little drop down arrow here, and I can go to view submissions for this. I can edit this folder or assignment. Now you can see here, this little eye marks it as hidden from students. So it's letting you know it's hidden. This icon lets you know it's part of your gradebook and it's assigned to a grade item. Okay, so I've got those 2 things flagging off. It's nice little visuals for you. But as a reminder here, this is not visible. To make this visible to students, I simply click the drop down arrow and then make visible to users. Okay. That eye goes away, and now I know it's visible to my students. You can also delete this assignment from here. You can make a copy of assignment or review the submission log. Great to know for file submissions for students in Brightspace. When they submit something, it automatically generates and sends them a submission email that confirms what date, time they submitted it to you. You'll see that information in here too, and if there was an attachment for it or not. Okay. You can play and create grade category, sorry, assignment category. So if I click on edit categories here, I won't have any categories, but I can add a category. So I might call this unit 1 as an example and create this category, and then close this. You can sort the order for these as well too. Now I'll see these categories here, and I haven't assigned anything to a category, but as I create those categories, I can move assignments into categories as well and look to reorder things and play around that way too. Okay. So again, lots of great options here for your setup. All right, that's assignments in a nutshell. The final piece I want to look at in this video is the Rubrics tool. Okay, so I'm going to go back up to assessment. We've looked at the grades tool. We've looked at creating assignments. Lastly, I'm going to pop into rubrics here. Okay, so to start a new rubric, I'm going to click new rubric, and it's going to come with a default system for you here. I really like the Rubrics tool. There are a lot of different ways to build out a rubric here and some really powerful resources, I think. So I'm just going to go here and I'm going to call this writing as an example of a writing rubric. Okay, it will default to kind of 4, 3, 2, 1 for you, and a point system based off of that. Again, there are so many ways that we assess. Brightspace gives you some good options for setting up your rubric. So you can see type here analytic. You can also flip it over to holistic. So if I'm going to want to use like that piece of more kind of scores with this and kind of just a more holistic look, I've got that. I can flip back to analytic and have that version. In both though, if I click on scoring points here, you can set up your own custom points and change these are editable too. But I can also just go no score and have it just focus on the level. Me personally, this is where I would land, but again, it's kind of customizable to you. If I go that holistic version again, I can also have no score there or that percentage option. It defaults to 4, 3, 2, 1, but if you would like it to be 1, 2, 3, 4, you can actually reverse the order and flip it for you here or flip back. So you can flip those too. All right, let's flip over back to analytic here and we'll leave with no score. You can put in your own criterion. So let's go as an example here, spelling and grammar. Here, you can put in that description or criteria for what a level 4, 3, and 2 is. Highlight again, bold, italics, underline, but also the insert stuff. So you can put media in here or files in here. So you can link to a Google Doc in here from your Google Drive if you want for students, or embed something or insert a video, whatever it may be. Okay, so that's really cool. And also in this initial feedback area, you can just type in, so if you click off level 4, you can have a starter of the feedback you would be giving to those students. When you go and assess this rubric, it's still customizable to that student. So you could delete it, change it, but it's there as a starting point for you. This can be a really great time saver if you want. To build this out, I can click on add criterion here, and now I have a second criterion for that I can enter, so I can go across. If I don't want a criterion, I can come over to the trash can here and delete it. And it's just going to check with you. Sure you want to do this? Click yes. And then it's there. If I don't, again, don't need to use levels. If I want to use a got it or not quite yet and have it to 2 levels, I can do that here and just delete these columns out. Okay, so I'm going to delete a column and delete a column. And I might go not quite yet, and got it. Okay, has 2 examples and build out that way. Okay, you do have an overall score set up here, which again you can customize. So like this is what you're using, and then you're going to check off the overall. So if you had specific multiple criteria here, you could again have those multiple areas, set up your feedback, and then choose an overall level for that task. Okay, so really good to keep that in mind there too. Now I'll highlight, I love using curriculum expectations in my assessments. Once you've added curriculum expectations to your class, and I'm going to be covering that in a separate video, I would see an expectations box here. Once I've added those expectations to my class once, I can click expectations and then tag overall, or if you want, specific expectations, and you can get tracking by that. So I'd add, say, an overall expectation here tied to that spelling, grammar, punctuation in the language or English curriculum in Ontario. And then as I tag off that expectation, if I use it's going to default to levels for this one because it's the way the system's set up. I could choose level 3 or 4, and it's going to give me tracking on that for those expectations and that progress for that student. Love, love, love this feature. We'll be looking at expectations as a whole in another video. Okay. All right. So we've got that there. Just want to mention that expectations piece. You build out your rubric, choose the overall level. Good to know before you're done here. Also options, expand this out. You get some really great choices here too. So rubric visibility, is it visible to students? You can have your rubrics, so the rubrics can, and I think it's good to have your students see the rubric, but maybe you want to have it hidden from them at the start, or you don't want them focused on the assessment piece and it's more for you. You can choose to hide this from students. And then you can also, whether it is your rubric feedback included. Now, if you have the rubric on, this isn't an option, but if you hide it from students, but you can, as you put in feedback to the rubric, you could have that filter into the overall feedback students get, or you can set the rubric to be hidden until the feedback is published. Me personally, I like it visible from the start there for my students, but it's good to know you have these options depending on the context you're looking at. And then the score too. So again, you've got your you got your key pieces here as you're leveling. The overall score you're choosing for this, you can also choose to hide that from students or not. And then the description, if you want, is just for you to kind of be able to check between your rubrics which one you're using. It's not for your students in the description piece, and it highlights that for you there. I'll highlight ePortfolio is the old legacy tool from It's Not Portfolio. So again, I wouldn't worry about this one. You can have it checked off, but don't worry about it. And comps and other things too, but it tell you what these associations are. Once you've got your rubric set up, simply click close. It will be saved here for you. You can see the details for it and be good to go. Important to know, once you assign a rubric to a assignment, if you start assessing that rubric, you're going to see a locked icon here. It's not going to let you make changes to that rubric because it's saying it's unfair for you to have something assigned to a student and an assignment, have it assessed, and then go and change it after the fact. So it will prevent you from doing that. You can always drop down here and copy a rubric and make a new copy of it that will not then be set to something. And again, you can choose to set your status to have this as a draft version of published, or you can archive your rubrics as well. Really cool, powerful options here with the Rubrics tool. And then again, if I went back into, let's do this right now. I've got this writing rubric here. If I go into assessment and back to my assignment really quickly, click the little drop down and edit this folder to edit this assignment. And then if I go into evaluation feedback, if I click that add rubric, you'll see now I have this add existing option. If I click here, there's my list of my rubrics. I can click here to preview it and see what I want, and click add selected. And now this rubric will be added to that assignment. I'll be able to expand it out, and then there's the criteria I set to assess that for that student. It can have that feedback built in. So I've added that rubric now. Really great option. I can go save and close. So I can see here, if I go back to rubrics now very quickly, you can see it's linked, and so I know it has an association. It's telling me I can't delete this because it's associated. If you wanted to delete this rubric, you need to go and remove it from the assignment. Okay, so it helps you how things are connected. All right, I'm gonna finish this video off here. Thank you for joining and listening in. Again, this video we looked at how to set up your gradebook and use the setup wizard, entering grade items, which would be a specific task, and the grade category, which is the overall bucket, essential learning, subject, unit, whatever you use to assess, how to start and create assignments in here and share resources out, and how to build the Rubrics tool. Again, not covered in this video because it's just a starting point, but if you want to use and assess by curriculum expectations, you can set that and add those to your class and have those filter out through all three of these things to get feedback on how students are progressing by level on the expectations as well. All the best.